Hi, I'm Ben Chelf, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Reading has fundamentally changed in the digital era. While we have access to more books than ever before, we also face an endless barrage of notifications, distractions, and screen fatigue. My guest today, Ben Chelf, is working to change that. Ben is the co founder and CEO of Soul, a company dedicated to reimagining the reading experience. Before launching Soul, he was a founding partner at Elementum Ventures and co founded Coverity, a software company and security company that attracted major investors and was later acquired by Synopsys. Named one of Computer World's top 40 under 40 innovative IT professionals and inducted into the Stanford Inventor Hall of Fame, Ben has a deep history of driving technological change. In this conversation, we dive into why single-purpose devices are making a comeback, how the Soul Reader is built to remove distractions, and what this means for the future of reading. If you've ever struggled to focus while reading on a screen and are just interested in what Soul has to offer, this episode's for you. Now, before we dive into the conversation, I just want to let you know that I did receive a pair of the Soul Reader glasses, and I use the term glasses interestingly because I wear glasses. We talk a bit about this during the episode, and I wanted to be upfront about that. Again, my goal with this episode is not to make it an infomercial or anything like that, but we're going to dive into the particulars of this product as well as other things, including how Ben deals with time. So all that being said, I hope you really enjoy this conversation because it's another productive one. So let's get started. I am wearing my Soul Readers that were sent to me. I actually, yeah, there they are. I'm gonna now. I'm gonna.
Same. Should I match?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now?
Oh, you've got.
Video.
Okay, we need. I'm gonna screen. Let's pause for a second and take a screen. Okay, we're gonna do 3, 2, 1, and we'll pause so that way we can get a nice screenshot. All righty, 3, 2, 1. All right, so I'm gonna cut that part out, but nonetheless, we took a nice little pause there. I'm holding on to my Soul, and it's Soul. It's pronounced Soul Readers, right?
Soul Reader. Yeah, Reader,
Soul Reader.
Yeah.
So, first off, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. Excited for this conversation. Always love to talk about productive things.
So let's start with you before we dive into this very unique and interesting product. But there are some threads that I want to go down with it in terms of focus and a new form of really wearable that is kind of, it's a market that's growing. But you've built and invested in a lot of high impact tech companies before. So what drew you to reading technology in general?
Yeah. So it was probably the mid teens, 2015, 2016, 2017, right around there. I really started almost becoming obsessed with our relationship with devices and the kind of unintended consequences of the mobile social era, where, suddenly we're on these things all the time. There's a lot of great convenience to it. Connectivity, I can tap a button and get groceries in my door in half an hour. But there's these other things that we don't love so much. I was talking with one of our friends of the company a couple weeks ago, and she was describing her bedtime routine on just being on Instagram all the time and how she just hates it. And she knows she shouldn't do it, but she doesn't really have anything better in its place. And so that's the context with which I was thinking about this broader problem with our devices. And my background's in software. So I was, to a software guy, everything's a software problem to be solved. I'm like, well, there's got to be an app or something I put on my desktop. And as you probably know, there are a lot of different options for shutting down certain websites or apps or whatnot.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, through this exploration over the course of a couple of years, as I was also an investor at the time, I kind of came to the conclusion it's not a software fix. There was a great quote from, I think, a New Yorker article where they were talking about focus for writing specifically. And they were talking about focus mode on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And they said, and here's the quote, focus mode on a smart device is like a meditation room in a casino. And I thought that really summed it up really well, that, we can app our way all we want and try to have discipline around it. But ultimately this new form factor with all of the, convenience and luxury that it affords is probably just not going to be the right thing.
Right.
So fast forward another year or two, another friend of mine, another investor, he was talking about kind of the future of AR, VR, where these, what we call face tech, where these face tech devices were going. And ultimately lamenting the fact that essentially everybody was trying to do too much. They were trying to build the all purpose everything device for your face. And you see, in fact, this was before the Vision Pro. Apple released one of these things,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's an iPhone on your face, and it's beautiful and whatnot, but it's huge. It's still this like huge ski mask thing. All the resources in the world, and there's still some fundamental science problems, computation problems, battery life, all that hasn't, and optics that haven't been solved yet to come up with a really satisfying tiny little form factor for doing the everything computer. And so that got us down the road of, maybe more single purpose, maybe more specific purpose. Like, what are the things, if we just really narrowed in on a use case or two, that we could optimize the heck out of and build a device that was really smaller, lighter weight, more like a pair of glasses, and did one thing really well? Well, maybe that'd be pretty compelling. And our observation was, well, reading hasn't had a big jump in technology in a long time. The Kindle came out the same year as the iPhone,
Mhm.
and yes, the resolution's a bit better. But by and large, a Kindle is the same as it was, 18 years ago.
Right.
And so, what if we innovated there? What if we thought about making reading more comfortable in bed? Primary use case for us, reading in bed is
Mhm.
is the killer use for the sole reader. And so we started prototyping, and this was even before we incorporated, before we built a business. We said, hey, can we even build one that's compelling? And our early prototypes we started to fall in love with, and that was really why we started the company. Is we fell in love with those early prototypes, and then we decided we should share that with others.
Well, it's interesting you talk about like the software hardware situation. To your point, I mean, you could go and set up your device all you want with the software, but as soon as the software update's pushed, it undoes everything, right? Whereas with hardware, it's different. Like I have, and we've had Adam Lieb on the program before, one of the people behind Free Write, and I actually have a
Mm-hmm.
Free Write Hemingway edition, and I use that
Mm-hmm.
specifically for writing when I'm writing long form content because
Sure.
you're right. The software, yes, you can. There is the ability to block stuff out, but we're also human, and so environmental stuff. It's the way I actually often compare this when someone says, when they look at their device, like this device can do everything. I'm like, but that doesn't mean it should. We're
Mm-hmm.
human, and like I said, I use the argument between the kitchen and the bathroom. I'm like, can you wash your dishes in the bathroom? Of course you can. But would you?
Yeah.
Why would you? It would be,
Right.
that you could in a pinch if your kitchen's under renovation or something like that. Like, yes, it is possible. So, it is doable. But if you can, creating, and I mean, we've seen this with, again, you mentioned the Kindle, the Kobo, all of that. Like having an independent device focused on reading is helpful. But we're even seeing some of these devices expand to like, well, what if we wanted to write on them with the advent of the Remarkable, and then Kindle brought out the Scribe?
Right.
How
Yeah.
how tricky? Well, first off, when it comes to the Soul Reader, its form factor will not allow for that kind of thing. Was that important to make sure it's like this is what we do and this is it, as opposed to having these roadmaps, which is definitely a software thing where,
Mm-hmm.
even in task management, it's like, well, it can do this now and this now and this now, which overwhelms what if you just stuck in this lane? Like a journaling app just does journaling. And the Soul Reader, all you're doing on it is reading in, like you said, in bed, on the beach, wherever, that kind of thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, there was very much a kind of specific purpose, single purpose view in mind. If you recall the old show from the '60s, The Jetsons,
Mhm.
as problematic as it was in certain aspects, the future that it painted was not necessarily a future of one device to rule them all that did everything. It was a lot of individual kinds of devices that did one thing really well for you, whether it be make your pancakes or have the automated thing come out of your closet to dress you, or and so it's a somewhat silly example, but rather looking at what the future that they envisioned was, it wasn't necessarily this homogenous one device thing. There were a lot of different devices, did a
Right.
lot of different things really, really well. And so we kind of borrowed a page from that. And so what we've noticed though, as kind of now people are using this more and more, is the place where it really sings from a use case standpoint is that time before bed. And I think that's, for me, that's what was most attractive to changing my own habits around bedtime. And that last 30 minutes before bed of what was previously doom scrolling or binge watching, and trying to like swap in something that's way more healthy for my
Right.
mind, namely reading a book or doing a short meditation or something like that.
Mhm.
And so when I think about the future of this device, now we recognize not everyone's a reader, so we know that we'd like to be able to help people with their wind down before bedtime, whether they're readers or not. And so when we think about expanding scope, it's not necessarily going to things like writing, but it is going to the other things that people might want to do that's really good for their brains before bed, like
Right, right.
meditation or listening to a book or listening to a podcast, things that truly help us shut down, wind down in an appropriate way, as opposed to the, just jabbing more dopamine into our minds right before bed.
Well, and I have friends that are using the Vision Pro, and their main use for it is immersing themselves in an environment that is very, calming, and like they'll write and they've got this, image
Mm-hmm.
around them and so on and so forth. So the interesting, but it requires discipline and will and all that stuff that, especially when we're getting ready to go to bed, that's
Mm-hmm.
for most people, night owls may be excluded, but depending on when we go to bed, that will is at its lowest. So by being able to just reduce friction in decision making and going, I'm going to pick these up, going to put them on, and boom, that's it. And this is what it will do. There is freedom in constraints.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
So you describe soul as illuminating the mind. What
Mm-hmm.
does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like the word you just used. There's a certain freedom when you aren't just tethered to your phone all the time, and I think in some sense, again, given the unintended consequences of the mobile plus social, we have shut our minds down in a certain way.
Mhm.
We have narrowed our perspectives. If you look at kind of what the algorithm feeds us, and I don't want to get into that whole thing, but it's very easy to just kind of get into an echo chamber of things that you like and things that you agree with and all of that. And that's historically pretty narrow minded. Our we are kind of I believe we are built as human beings to be in community with others, and heaven forbid people who disagree with things that we think, and that's a good thing, right? That we should have kind of a plurality of ideas. And so my fear is I want, or maybe spinning it more positively, my hope with soul and what we can do with these technologies is we can reopen people's minds. We can shine a light where there has been kind of a darkness of closed off and just like a single channel of input into our minds because of just where technology has taken us.
So you mentioned that the habit building of using soul before bed, I think that's a great option. I could tell you that when mine arrived, the first thing that happened is my kids saw them. They're like, "What are these? They're
Uh,
cool sunglasses." I'm like,
mm,
"They're not sun." They're like, "But they're solid on the front. Like, what are they?" I'm
yeah.
like, they
Yes.
they literally thought, "Is this something from like Demolition Man or Back to the Future
Mhm.
2 or something like that?" Yes,
Right.
I've indoctrinated my kids into 1980s and 90s action
It's
films.
excellent. Yes,
But
we just went through the Back to the Future ones with my kids as well, so right there with you.
but once one of the things that came to mind as they were I let them take a look at them too, and we'll get into why I can't use them
Mhm.
in a minute.
Sure.
But one of the things that I noticed, especially my son and my daughter who's older, were saying like, "When would you use these and would you ever wear these in public?" And I thought
Mhm.
about it for a second because I was at Tiago Forte's Second Brain Summit in October of 2024. And there was one person that was walking around with Vision Pros on. And I've seen, I mean, the Vision Pro is
Mhm.
number one. I've gone to Apple and my son and I did a test drive and
Sure.
they're number one, huge. Like you pointed out, version one is huge. Not unlike like there was, version one of the iPhone was like the iPad, all of these technology,
Yes.
as it evolves, it gets refined. But the battery, like the nice thing is the battery is it contained in these. There is plenty of warnings that you've included in the manual, which I think is very, very obviously smart.
Mhm.
But to the it got me thinking about this show I just finished watching with my wife called Running Point on Netflix, where there's a scene where one of the players, I'm going to spoil it, but by the time this episode's out, if you haven't seen it, then sorry about that. Or sorry about that. I am Canadian after all. Is the one player was struggling with shooting free throws, so he was shooting a granny shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, and in a game, he started to get teased by his fellow players and stopped. So for somebody that's looking to adopt this, that's a long way to get to this question. Other than the going, before bed, what are some other use cases? And for somebody who's like, I don't know, man, I don't know. I mean, they're definitely a unique, different kind of tool, and they're not like the Facebook Ray-Ban glasses or anything like that can hide in plain sight, no pun intended. What are some of the other use cases that you've seen people use? And for those that like want to sit on public transit and stuff, what's some of that friction that might, how do you help break that friction a bit?
Yeah, I mean, public transit probably not ever going to be in scope for this kind of thing until it is more of a Ray-Ban see-through, right? You want more situational awareness in that kind of environment. There is, you probably noticed, there is some peripheral vision.
Yes.
So where we hear and where we like to use them most, airplanes, big one, flights, it's great. You're not as worried about something happening on a flight. You can kind of still see out the side of your eye or over the top to or order your drink or whatnot. So airplanes are a great use case. And then it's a lot of vacation kinds of settings, at the pool, on the beach. Part of the nice thing about having it be completely occluded in front is, from being outside, it's kind of darkening it for you. And so, those tend to be the big use cases. It's in bed, on vacation, on an airplane.
See, what I like, the airplane you bring up immediately, that was one of the things Apple was touting. Hey, you could wear these on an airplane and all that. I'm like, yeah, they're so huge though. These are a smaller form factor that you can get away with. And so let's shift into why I can't use them. Okay. And maybe some of the things that you might be doing, because again, this is not uncommon. Apple Vision Pro struggle with this. We had the gentleman from Saint Motel, actually, the lead singer who founded A-Views. We'll link to that episode in the show notes. He's got some glasses that have the sliding in lenses that help filter out light and can create different lights. I can't wear those either. And why? Progressive lenses. I cannot read without my glasses. So I struggled with it because of that. So what are some of the things that you're thinking about with the future of Soul that will allow it to appeal, not necessarily to people who, like you pointed out, not everybody's a reader. Well, a niche market is, if you try to appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. But for a reader like me, who literally reads books for podcasts and for the work I do, and as a writer, what are some of the things that you're looking at? Is there quote hope for somebody like me with progressive vision?
Yeah, 100%. And as a reminder to you and those listening, we're a startup. This is V1. We're at the beginning of this journey, and there's always technical trade-offs that you have to make as you're developing a V1 product, and you don't have the budget of, say, an Apple or a Meta. But one of the trade-offs that we made, and for those who do see the video, is we decided rather than going a fancy prescription route, is we would just have diopter adjustment like a binoculars, so that you can to some degree, it's a limited range, but there is some range of adjustment for corrective lenses. It's about 5 diopters worth. We recognize that wasn't going to fix it for everybody, and a lot of that has to do with scale. So as a smaller company in early production runs of a first version product, we simply won't have the scale to do kind of the fancy prescription lens type of add-on, but that's absolutely where we're going for the next version of the product. So rather than having the adjustment on the device itself, you would have an add-on where you put in your prescription, and other folks have done this as well for the face tech space, and then they would just snap on the top of the existing lenses, and you'd be all set to go. So it is a more of a manufacturing and business matter of scale than it is a technical constraint. We just decided in V1 to do the simpler thing where, we knew we were going to cover some percentage of the population, but not everybody.
Well, and that's a niche in and of itself. Now, to be clear, Apple couldn't solve my problem either when I was, and they have those lenses built in. They're like, whoa, my vision is my eyes are healthy, my vision is weak. That's what my doctor says. So it's like, but I mean, what I have found that I can use the Soul Reader with is to block out things when I am like I'm using it almost in those
Mm-hmm.
situations where I do want to heighten at this point like my other senses. So if I'm meditating and listening to a meditation,
Hmm.
doing that is helpful, especially because it's not pure. Like, I mean, I'm seeing something, there is something there. And so, to your point, you were mentioning earlier some of the other things you could explore. That to me is an area that definitely is there. Even if you have like something that's visually there that isn't necessarily, shall we say, words,
Hmm.
there is opportunity there. Are there other things that you're thinking of beyond like even just that as a possibility? Let's, without giving away too much.
Yeah. So the kind of internal marching orders, if you will, is we talk about everything you want to do before bed and nothing that you don't want to do before bed. So we just encourage people like, what is on that list? Maybe it's learning a language, and so there's a way to like listen to the language, see the words from the language. Maybe it's meditation, like you mentioned, an audio component, something like a podcast or an audio book. There are these devices, and I'm not saying we will necessarily integrate with these, but there are these devices that will kind of measure your brain activity and give you a report of like how, where you are from a meditative standpoint or focus
Yeah,
standpoint.
like the
And
Muse and like some of those.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is, as soon as you start
exactly.
talking about that, I mean, I'm going to be going for a walk after this. I've got bone conductive headphones, which go right.
Hmm.
There's opportunities there. I would see. I'm just
So yeah, our points of contact,
Yep.
right, are the nose and potentially behind the ears,
Yep.
and you can get a lot of EEG activity even from the nose. So
Hmm.
so these are the kinds of things from a very far looking future roadmap. Where for us, again, if we help you with bedtime, if we help you with that last 30 to 60 minutes before bed, and we say, okay, time to put your iPhone away, or your smartphone away. Sorry, Android users, put your smartphone away, and you want something to do that's healthy, that's has a lot of the convenience that your smartphone would have had, the set of apps that you would like to engage with. We think there's probably room for a pretty nice device that sits on the nightstand that is your bedtime companion. After you wash your face and brush your teeth, you kind of reset your mind with this.
Gotcha. All right, I'm going to shift gears because as we're recording this, about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, Amazon made some changes to
Mhm.
their ability to download books that you have. I'm air quoting here, purchased for your Kindle.
Yes.
Now, let's be clear. Amazon always kind of said you have a license to read these books, but the language that they used front facing, and also, let's be honest, not a lot of people read the entire terms of service when they're buying something
Sure.
or they
Sure.
think that they're buying something. Um, they are so basically, if you get something for your Kindle, you are now locked into that ecosystem, for lack of a better
Yes.
term.
It must be consumed on an Amazon device or an Amazon app or whatever.
Exactly. Now, there are other devices out there. I've sold my Kindle, by the way, because of that, because it's like, look, I mean, I want to be able to have options. Now, you do have the marketplace, right? And when I was using it, I was able to bring existing
Mhm.
books into it. So,
Sure.
are you thinking? So, the marketplace, I think, is critical. Can we talk about that? And for people who already have books, they're like, well, how will these work with with the Soul
Yeah.
Reader? I'd love to hear about that because there's a lot of people out there that have probably taken those books, and
Hmm.
whether they are books that they purchased that are EPUB files, or whether, and I'm not condoning this, but whether somebody has said, "Hey, let's make these Kindle books something that I can read somewhere else."
Sure. Sure.
In terms of EPUB files specifically, or even I think PDFs to a degree, what are some of
Mhm.
the things that we can do with existing content that people bring to the Soul Reader or
Yes.
want to bring to the Soul Reader?
Yeah. So, we have a way to upload PDFs as well as DRM free EPUBs. So if you have EPUB in the traditional EPUB format, then yeah, you can upload them. There's a couple of different ways. You can upload it through our app on the smartphone. You can upload it on a website. You can upload it directly via USB cable from your computer through our app, that on the desktop app. And so yeah, all of that content is fair game, and you can use it and read it. I think to your point, Amazon has decided to draw a harder line in the sand than they did previously with respect to the downloadability.
Mhm.
And you also alluded to, right, depending on your jurisdiction, we have to say that there are laws that
Yep.
regulate what you can do with DRM encrypted content. And the same is true for our store. That has to do with our relationship with publishers and distributors, right?
Yep.
But we have taken a bit more of an open approach where, in fact, you can kind of go to our website and I can send you the link if you want to put it in the show notes, where we describe our DRM solution. It's an open DRM solution that we are happy to share with, and others could implement if they wanted. We don't necessarily expect. We understand we're a small fish. We don't expect any bigger guys to do it today. But we do think that to this point around you bought a license to this book. Yes, there needs to be some protection for it. We understand that. Let's protect authors. Let's protect publishers. It's copyrighted material. But there can be a more open standard for that protection, such that the customer benefits in being able to move from device to device and read the content where they want to read it, if those places implement these more open standards for protection. So that's kind of our position on it. That's what we advocate for is, hey, let's make this protection more portable.
Now, when it comes to dealing with publishers and even independent authors, that's an area that I'm sure that you're exploring because this is a new format. It's a
Hmm.
new platform with which people
Hmm.
can use. And I mean, I think of things like uh, you know, deals that people make with tools like Shortform or Blinkist and so on and so forth when you're
Hmm.
dealing with authors. And I mean, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But in this case, I mean, this is a new realm that publishers and even independent authors can kind of explore and
Hmm.
reach readers, especially with, for those, let's say, that want to read more so fiction before they wrap up
Hmm.
their day, or for
Hmm.
those that want to have unfiltered, or rather unfettered but filtered content when they're trying to learn something. So
Hmm.
I'd love to hear some thoughts as much as you can share on where that's headed for the Soul Reader and the Soul Marketplace as well.
Yeah, our goal is to allow people to read kind of whatever they want to read on the device in this version and future versions. So we have about 1.5 million titles already in terms of the deals we've already lined up with existing distributors. That's a list that we will grow over months and years as we continue to evangelize the product and show it off to more and more folks, and as people get comfortable with it from a form factor standpoint. So we're well on our way. We're not perfect yet, but we're well on our way.
So let's say someone buys this,
Hmm.
they pick up a Soul Reader. I mean, the packaging's beautiful, by the way. It's always
Oh, thank you.
great. I am a big believer, and I mean, I've worked with companies like Bear and Fig and others, and when I see really nice packaging, it just makes it so much of an incredible experience. And I mean, Apple would be one that people speak to
Yeah.
a lot. So when
Gold
you were
standard,
putting the
yeah.
packaging together, what we're gonna and it arrives in the mail. I'll actually I'm gonna show. I've got it comes in this nice box and it opens up so nicely, and there's the
Mhm,
remote and the
mhm.
case and everything. How important was it to you to get the packaging dialed in?
Oh, 100%. Well, you can see in the attention to detail, it was extremely important to us. I think it's the first thing that a customer sees when they're engaging with your physical product. You have to see the packaging before you see the product,
Mhm.
and so it's the first impression. You want it to be a great experience from second one, and so yeah, we talk a lot in here about those first 30 to 90 seconds of interaction. And we even know that likely after you open the box, the first thing you want to do is open the temples of the glasses. So
Mhm.
so yeah, we thought a tremendous amount about that. We have a great creative team that was thinking through all those details, and even I don't know if you noticed, but the like embossed logo that then was hidden and revealed from the sleeve, and the embossed words on the back that kind of mirror our slogan around the history of reading. So yeah, all of those little things. And I don't know if you read through the entire warranty book, but even the safety and warranty book, we threw a bunch of little Easter eggs in there. There's some just like funny turns of phrases. We kind of wax on poetic about your recycling process. If you should ever need to recycle your soul reader, we sure hope that the next one is on its way. It's those kinds of little flourishes and attention to detail that we think for the people who know and really pay attention to those sorts of things, they'll smile. They'll love it.
It was stunning to see how thick that book was. It was really
Yeah.
because a lot now it's mostly like, take a picture of this QR code and everything's there, or it's here's your quick start manual. Like this is, I mean, and the quick start is built right into this, which is great,
Yes.
like right
Yeah.
into the device. But I mean, that alone, and to be clear, although I mentioned this in the introduction, I was sent a complimentary pair of the Soul Reader to be able to test it out. So, just to be completely
Mhm.
transparent about that again. All right. So as we get close to wrapping up, how big of a reader are you?
Mm. Well, way more than I used to be. And so my story with respect to reading is I was just a voracious reader as a kid. Starting as soon as I could read, first grade, second grade. I mean, I was just consuming books nonstop. And I was the kid who had the couple of books in the backpack, and every break at school or whatever was pulling them out. And even into junior high, that was the case. And then high school happened, and that's when I first got the internet and email. And so while I talk about like the social mobile era of really pushing us over the deep end, I've been a card carrying dopamine addict since the mid 90s. And just like, different we called them news groups. There were an old
Mhm.
Unix app that would allow you to talk to your friends, which was kind of a form of social media and constant email checking and all of that. And so that really, it took a big hit to my reading habits that I love. And I would still read a fair amount on vacations. I'd bring my big stack of books, but I was never a Kindle guy. I owned a couple of Kindles, and it never really stuck
Yeah.
because I think largely my iPhone, or even before that, my smart device, like a Trio 600, for those who know what that was,
Mhm.
it was still in my pocket. It was still a distraction. It was, again, because I was so addicted to dopamine. And so part of my desire to build this device was for me. And now I read a ton. It's a habit that I read 20 to 50 minutes before bed every night. Usually fiction. I hit a new milestone this year where I've noticed over the last few years, having used the device now, my brain has changed. I
Mhm.
am I am able to focus on longer and longer parts of text. I am more present in the moment with my family. Um, and uh, and so I decided to tackle a couple of books that I had started in my 20s and didn't make any progress on. And I restarted one of them at the beginning of this year, kind of thick literary kind of stuff. And now it's just delightful because I can just sit there for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, uninterrupted, nonstop. So I have rediscovered the love of reading of 10-year-old Ben or 12-year-old Ben, and that's really quite great.
So you're reading Infinite Jest on your Soul Reader then?
That is literally what I am reading.
Are you serious right now?
Yes. 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 And about a month in, I'm like 25% of the way through the book. And it is a hard book.
It
And,
is.
and like
It's
I just
long and
started.
hard. It's like
It's
it's
long and
yep.
hard. But now, like, when people talk about, oh, it's so funny, and I before I thought, oh, people are just like blowing smoke and so on. But I think my brain was really just kind of wrecked before I couldn't read that book. And the other one that I plan to pick up the second half of this year when I
Mhm.
get through Infinite Jest is War and Peace. I started War and Peace. I'd read a lot about Tolstoy and why he wrote it. I don't know if you know this, but he was going to be a historian,
Yeah.
and he decided, what, there's not enough richness in description of historical events. I should write characters and stories around those time periods to get through to people what this was really like. So anyway, I'm going to dive back into War and Peace and see if after I get through Infinite Jest, I can tackle War and Peace. So those are my two big, goal reads of the year. And I'm throwing in some other lighter stuff as well.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, so yeah, I decided to start reading Infinite Jest this year, and it's working. And that's pretty awesome.
That is like I said, it's a lengthy book. I have the paperback sitting on, and it's one that I've read
Hmm.
like a few pages at a time. Like, oh my goodness,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's like reading Sartre or any of these
Yeah.
deeper kind of. But again, to your point, like if that filtration is there and there's nothing else to see, you can dive deeper into it. I've noticed that especially when I'm reading paper books, like that, you can tell the first, I would say, 15 minutes of reading is it's gotten easier, but initially it's hard because your
It's hard.
your your brain is kind of going, okay, what else do I need to be looking at right now? It's like, no, you don't. Like, just keep. There's nothing
Mm.
else to look at. Um, Before we wrap up, I want to ask a couple questions in terms of relationship with time and how because we
Hmm.
are a podcast and my area is all about managing relationships with time and and cultivating the state of productiveness. So over the years, I mean, we've touched on your reading and how that's changed, both
Mhm.
from where it was to what it became and now where it's at now. But how's your relationship with time kind of evolved over the years? Can
Mm.
you
Mhm.
tell me any pivotal shifts that have helped you work with it more than maybe against it?
Yeah, yeah. The word that comes to mind is presence. I think I mentioned that before.
Mhm.
I think that distractedness, it's kind of at odds with this notion of being in the moment and being present to the time that you have for any particular task, whether it be breakfast with your family or reading a book or or certain work things that you want to do. So one of the big things that I changed um, in the last year that I am loving is a card carrying terrible phone in the car user. Like just it's awful. And
Mhm.
I know we're not supposed to do it, but I just if I have my smartphone in the car, I can't help but not look at it. And I've even tried the glove box thing. Like if
Yep.
it's not in the trunk, I am going to reach for it.
Yeah.
So last year I decided, okay, I'm going to try to be, a better person. And I just decided I wouldn't put my phone in the car anymore. And I got a different phone for the car. It's I've heard this described by people as the kale phone. Maybe you've heard this analogy
No, I
before.
haven't. So the kale phone,
Yeah,
go
like
ahead. Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
kale phone versus a cocaine phone. So
Oh,
the
yeah,
kale
yeah, yeah.
phone,
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
yeah, the kale phone doesn't actually have anything except for useful things. Like, for example, it has Google Maps and it has music and podcasts and things that are fine, but it doesn't have. My wife has the phone number. This was her condition. She said,
Mhm.
"I just got to know where you are, and I gotta be able to call you in case of emergency, or I want you to make sure you can call somebody in case of emergency." But no friends have that phone. It doesn't have social media. It has nothing,
Sure,
right? Um, and what I so that was like part one of the hack was to do that because I do kid drop off for
sure.
school in the morning. And so suddenly I'm more present with the kids. We're having more conversations in the car. I'm not thinking about the work I'm supposed to about to be doing. And then the related hack is I just decided I wasn't going to allow any external kinds of calm input until after our daily stand up at work, which is usually around 11 o'clock.
Mm.
So I do all my deep thinking, deep work, all of that in the morning hours. And I really don't have email input. I don't have Slack input. I don't have any of those kinds of inputs until after 11 o'clock. And I'm not perfect, but as a rhythm, that's what I'm shooting for. And what it has done with my time in the morning, it has essentially transformed that into a far more present, far more thoughtful, creative space. And I don't think this is, people can read all about these different kinds of hacks. I know you don't necessarily like the word time hack, but that one for me is where has worked really well. Just making sure there's a certain delineation in time where I'm allowed certain kinds of inputs.
Well, and I think the thing about hacks is that they've been done to death. The idea of cutting without care, which is where it comes from. It doesn't sound like these are quote hacks because you've actually put some thought and care
Mm,
into establishing them. It's interesting because I'm reading a book right now for my Time Crafting Trust community.
mm,
We have a premium book club, and it's Voluntary Simplicity, which was
mm.
originally written by Dwayne Elgin back in the 80s. Maybe you can get it on the Soul Reader.
Yeah.
And he talks about like Ram Dass does the introduction. I don't know if you know who Ram Dass is, but he
Mm,
is, I mean, he was well known he passed away about a couple of years ago now, but his phrase was be here now. And it's like this
mm,
idea of here and now that he discusses is like both come and go, right? Because here is both a place and a time, and now is both
mm.
a place and a time. And it's interesting that when I look at the Soul Reader, what it does is it does create, and you mentioned this already, there is a presence element to it that you really can't get with a like a tablet, or the
Mhm.
closest you can get is a actual paper book. And the fact that you and your team have managed to kind of create that, fill that chasm, right? And kind of bridge
Mm.
that gap, I think is, a testament to the work you've been doing. So I appreciate that. And for those who want to pick up a pair and learn more about Soul and the Soul Reader, where can people go? And where can people
Yeah.
keep up with you?
Yeah, soulreader.com and then also at soulreader on Twitter and at soulreader underscore on Instagram. And I am not very deep on social media. I am at Ben Chelf on Twitter, but there are very few tweets, mostly just reposts of soul stuff from time to time. So that's where you find me.
Ben, thanks so much for having a productive conversation with me today.
Mike, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks to Ben for joining me today. We have all of the links that were mentioned and any other relevant stuff in the show notes. And you can get those wherever you get your podcasts or wherever you're listening right now, or at mikevardy.com/podcast 612. Now, while you're listening to this episode, if you're not already a subscriber or a follower, make that happen now. You can follow us on Spotify, leave comments. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, and we are also on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can get a productive conversation. And as a subscriber, you're supporting the show. Leave comments, ratings, reviews, all that fun stuff. That's it for this episode. The sun is setting on this one. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.